Hello, my name is Tendai Manumbo, and this is Real Talk. Zimbabwe's public finance management is generally characterized by misappropriation of public funds, financial irregularities, non-compliance to public finance management regulations, unreconciled and unaccounted expenditure, and lack of value for money in general. The Office of the Auditor General submitted a public sector audit report for the year ending December 31st, 2020. The report unearthed gross misappropriations of resources by ministries, departments, and agencies, which has become a trend in prior annual reports. Corruption by public officials appears, according to the report, to have continued and is the chief cause of socio-economic challenges in Zimbabwe. Today we have Honorable Temba Mliswa, Independent Member of Parliament for Norton constituency. He is an avid advocate for indigenous empowerment and socio-economic development. He has held the position of Vice President for Affirmative Action Group before founding the Zimbabwe Economic Empowerment Council, where he is the immediate past president. His involvement in agriculture also saw him found the Tobacco Association of Zimbabwe, of which he is a trustee. He is also the chairman of the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption, or APNAC, and it is in this light that we have him as a guest here today. Welcome to our show, Honorable Mliswa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and a good day to the viewers.
Okay. So for starters, please may you just help us understand what APNAC is, what it stands for, and just how you operate.
APNAC, A stands for African, P, Parliamentarians, and Network, A, Against, C, Corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really an organization which is fighting corruption with the likes of UNCAC, United Nations, anti-corruption bodies which are there,
Mm-hmm.
which is known as UNCAC, the African chapter as well. So you have a group of parliamentarians who volunteer to be part of APNAC. And in so doing, they have to stick to the agenda of the UN in terms of dealing with corruption at this level. It's more or less like the SDGs that you have.
Yes.
But this is from a corruption perspective.
Okay.
And Zimbabwe was first introduced to APNAC, and Honorable Mliswa was the founding chairperson, 2003. It's been in existence since 2003.
That's quite a while, yeah.
Yeah, with Honorable Maridadi as well,
Mm-hmm.
as chairperson, with Honorable Ms. Herambwe, ambassador now to Sweden. I've taken over from her. And now I'm the chairperson, and we work together with organizations like Transparent International Zimbabwe, with an MOU with the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. And that allows us to be able to really do a lot. There's certain things that you can do in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
But again, in Parliament, you're kind of restricted. But when you do it voluntarily, the impact is important. And our esteemed Speaker, Advocate, Honorable Advocate Jacob Francis Mzwindalimu Mudenda, has been very progressive in us being able to be true parliamentarians all the way.
Okay.
And if it was not for his support, it would become difficult for us to do that. So it talks about him as an individual, as Parliament, eager to fight corruption outside Parliament. And,
Right.
And
So there's a separation here.
yeah, and APNAC is that, but we're well resourced by Parliament.
Right, I
as
see.
well. In most of the programs that we were involved in, the workshop, capacity building workshop that we had in Bulawayo, that was Parliament funding it. We're going to Kenya, benchmarking,
Okay.
because we have to visit good jurisdictions which are well known for tackling corruption.
Okay.
So we'll be doing that. And you know, benchmarking is critical for you to understand where you are and what you need to do and all that. So we have members of Parliament with a constitution that we have, and Right now, the membership is probably sitting on close to 60 members of parliament.
Right.
Probably paid up, you probably look at about 35 because we pay an affiliation fee of 50 US per year.
Oh, right.
As
for the committee or
yes, no, for
per member?
To be a member of APNEC.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, that's fine. So what is the mandate of APNEC within the region?
Is to ensure that we address issues of corruption in a synchronized manner. It's like the SADC conventions that you have. You're speaking from the same language. It's like EU having one currency, and so forth. So we now have to look at what problems are we facing as different chapters and how best can we solve them. Also incorporating certain chapters that have dealt with these problems conclusively, and how then do we make it better. So we come up with the resolutions, we come up with a way forward on how we're going to do with that. The capacitation of members too, and outreach programs to get to the people. And one of the functions that we have to do is to ensure that we get the people to understand corruption and what we must do about it. With the whistleblowers protection bill coming through, we believe it has to start from ward level. Because, once you're at ward level where everybody is at, then it becomes easy. We seem to want to move these programs based on the national structures. But national structures are nothing without the ward structures.
Yes.
So it's the bottom-up approach rather than the top-bottom approach. So those are some of the areas we have to do. The reason why I talk about this is that it becomes impossible for you to achieve any intended goal or vision without incorporating the populace at the end of the day.
Yeah, true. So you're saying that you build bit by bit. So each ward is a little brick, and then you build to have this big monument.
Exactly.
But,
and corruption, especially in the rural areas,
yes,
is
rampant.
Is rampant in a big way. And it's being rampant. What are we doing about it? They're very impoverished in many ways. They're an easy target because, of course, communication doesn't get as fast as it should. They have no access to social media because digitization has not gotten there. And so they are behind. So with the traditional leaders, we can then incorporate them and be able to give them an education. What is critical is to educate people.
Yeah, true. But having said that you want to educate people and basically you're saying you're for the people, right? But some of your critiques have said that APNEC is a toothless bulldog. And some institutions which bring the notion of isomorphic mimicry to reality. Some institutions say this about APNEC. What is your comment on that?
Listen, any organization is led by a leader.
That's
I'm
true.
the leader. And I think already there will be changes. Already there are changes. And I'm not saying that my predecessors were not good leaders. It is a relay at every level, at every stage. Somebody has got to play their part.
A relay suggests movement, though. Has there been movement? Has there been progression?
There's been progression. There's been progression in many ways, and I think the capacity building of the members is critical too, because they must understand their role. They must understand what APNEC stands for. We have a tendency of coming up with great ideas, but there's no modus operandi in terms of the implementation and execution. You see, so depending on the leader at the time, Honorable Mr. Arambwe did well, brought the president in 2019 as the guest of honor at the Mikos Hotel, but we now need to take it to the next level. I've always said the president, yes, agrees with the advocacy of zero tolerance for corruption, but there must be players who implement this, the different institutions and so forth. So the president is there, but we also need to also have the guest of honor, the Chief Justice himself, because the judiciary has a role to play in curbing corruption. The Prosecutor General's office is also critical. So in aligning the vision of the president, we need to interrogate the various institutions who are responsible for ensuring APNAC has no arresting powers.
Yes.
You must understand that.
No.
And for us, I don't know why people expect us to have teeth, because teeth must be with the police. They must have teeth. ZAC, the Zimbabwe Antique, must have teeth. And the Prosecutor General must have teeth. And for us, we're also pushing for them to have teeth.
So, okay, so yours is just the oversight. You see things and you just talk about them and you leave it there.
Yes, we have no any other power other than to advocate and to ensure that institutions mandated with dealing with corruption are executing their mandate according to the Constitution. Not only that, there are many reports and recommendations which have come out, but there's not been implementation. So we are now coming to say, but this was said, there was a recommendation, why has it not been done?
Right. Okay, so let's bring this closer home and talk about public finance management and corruption in Zimbabwe. What does APNAC have to say about that? Because it's wild out there at the moment. What does APNAC have to say about the reality at the moment in line with corruption? Listen,
we're very clear in terms of corruption is fast growing as a cancer, and it will wipe everyone out. And I've always said that as much as we have sanctions, there's a big debate if sanctions cause corruption. No, I think corruption has a lot to do with the discipline of a nation, of individuals.
So it's lacking, is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's lacking. I think there is just an appetite to get rich quickly. Look at the auction. Which people access foreign currency. You know, the Dutch auction. How many are genuine business people? The prices of houses and cars has gone up, but there's no production. We have resources. And where are these resources going to? There's a Consolidation Revenue Fund, which is responsible for keeping the country's wealth, money.
But what is APNAC doing about it? That's the question.
APNAC
we all see it happening.
APNAC is following up on constitutional matters which deal with corruption to ensure that that is being done. And that's what we've done. And we've done it in a manner which I think nobody else has even tried to. We invited the Prosecutor General, Acting Prosecutor General, the chairperson of ZAC, the police, at our last workshop to explain. And because they have the powers, like I said, we don't have powers. And it takes a lot to say to them, but why are we not dealing with corruption? Why are they we don't release? It's the Prosecutor General who releases. So there must be an education in our people too. Because our people think ZAC are the ones who prosecute. They don't. They arrest. For a few dockets, they get it to the NPA, the Prosecutor General's office. And they're the ones who prosecute. If they're not prosecuting, you cannot blame ZAC. And the last meeting we had, we encouraged that the Acting Prosecutor General, Mr. Nelson Tunziwa, is quite alive to the fact that there were pending dockets which needed to hit the courts.
Yes.
Not only, but there must be a time frame. I am the complainant in a matter. Why case is taking long? The next thing I die, there's no more evidence. The case is closed. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. So we are pushing for time frames in terms of the courts. We are also looking at rules of the courts to also change. And one of the rules which we've got, should people be given bail when there's an offense of corruption which has been created?
And the extent also has to be put into consideration.
Exactly. So, people are worried about the catch and release, but we are starting to educate them that this is the framework. You've got the judiciary there, you've got the prosecutor there, you've got the arresting officials. Unless, unfortunately, the arresting official cannot be the judge. And neither can they be the prosecutor. The prosecutor cannot be the arresting authority. So there is a piston which was not firing, and that's the Prosecutor General's piston.
All right. So you're saying there is a chain. You, APNAC, or Parliament, rather, reports on an issue and then take it to ZAC. That's part of your MOU that you mentioned, right? And then ZAC, just going through the line, in theory, you report, ZAC arrests, and then the Prosecutor General releases. Is that what you're saying? Or is not?
No, what we're saying is this. The ZAC and the Zimbabwe Republic Police have got powers to arrest constitutionally.
Yes.
We don't. Okay.
Which we understand.
We didn't advocate. And then the National Prosecutor General's office is responsible for prosecuting. And then the judiciary is responsible for the verdict. So it's a three-tier system, what people must understand. So when you talk about catch and release, you cannot blame ZAC because ZAC have caught.
Yes.
The release is up to the evidence to provided how strong the thing docket is for one to be convicted.
Okay.
And if it's not strong enough, then they'll be found not guilty. And this is what people have been saying, but catch and release. So how competent is the office of the Attorney General?
Yeah.
And how competent our judges, magistrates, in terms of presiding over these matters? So it's not a one-stop shop for ZAC. If ZAC were responsible for these three roles, arresting, at the same time prosecuting, at the same time presiding over the matter, then we would say, okay, they failed.
Yeah, so it's not within their power. So what challenges are you facing as APNAC? Just to do your role and perform, make sure your mandate is met. What challenges are you facing?
No, like any institution, corruption fights back. It's a serious, it's a risk to even say one is corrupt. Listen, I have been bold enough to say the things I say, and I think I owe my survival and my creation to the Almighty. So I have a mandate to play, and that's to ensure that there's a better Zimbabwe through the role that we play as members of parliament. But most people are quiet. People see corruption, they're quiet. And, and without the whistleblowers protection bill, there's a problem too, because you need to protect people. We need to have a nation where everybody can tell that there's corruption, can report on it.
So you're saying one of the challenges you're facing is safety and security.
Oh, you've got to understand that. Because corruption fights back.
That is true.
It fights back.
Okay. Now, your success rate, because you said that it has been progressive. You've been doing well. It's been one step after another in the direction of improvement. What is your success rate so far since APNAC started?
If you want to ask me out of 10, we are probably at 8, going for 10 out of 10, and I think we've done well.
That is very high. Please maybe have just one example or two.
What we have done, like I've said, has been to ensure that the Auditor General's reports, recommendations are implemented, which is critical, because Zimbabweans are good at writing, but they don't implement, they don't execute. What we have also done is to ensure that the authorities mandated with curbing corruption do it and know that they're well supported. Not only that, for them to be well resourced from a parliamentarian point of view. Parliament passes the budget. So we have advocated for that in many ways, that there must be enough money for people to keep corruption, because you can't surely give somebody Mercedes-Benz and BMW. It doesn't work. Okay, and it's kind of laughing stock at the end of the day, because how do you really send Munukondo Akabata Reken or Russia and Ukraine in a...
There's no match.
There's no match. So we need them to be resourced. They need to go out, because that's one of the issues which is critical.
So I would put that on one of the challenges that you're facing.
One of the challenges, but we've been successful in terms of pushing resources to be channeled to ZAC in Parliament.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for that. What do you think you need to improve your success rate? Because you said it's at 8, right? At the moment, it's at 8 out of 10.
We need to really conscientize the people. Once we conscientize the people, then we'll be 11 out of 10.
Conscientize the people of Zimbabwe?
Of the corruption and APNAC, its role, and the many other institutions.
All right.
You see, because people don't know, and especially the rural areas.
So what are you doing to conscientize?
No, we shall be rolling out.
Okay.
I've only been in office since like January.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's 4.5 months.
That's 4.5 months, and I think a lot of progress have been made.
All right.
In that regard.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on you.
I don't know if an eye is right. Somebody says if we go for an eye, who will be left with eyes? So
it's just a nation of the blind, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We're just going to take a very short break right now. Welcome back to our second segment, Honourable. I just want to find out from you what role APNAC and the Parliament plays to ensure that the OAG recommendations are implemented without fail and action taken against legally proven wayward individuals, parastatals or ministries.
You've got to understand that the Auditor General's office has been exceptional in exposing corruption.
It really has.
And the credit must go to Madam Chiri. She was supposed to have retired. And we had to make noise in Parliament to say she must come back. To the point that the delegation had to be appointed to go and convince the husband that she must come back. That's how good she is. That's how dedicated she is to her duty. And definitely a model for the girl child and for the women across the world. These reports coming out come with recommendations. And the recommendations can be bad governance, mismanagement, corruption. And what's critical is that we assess them as Parliament. We debate on them.
And research? Do you do research?
Oh, yes, and we do all that because it comes because it's the Auditor General's office. It's tabled in Parliament. We debate this, that, yes. And there are recommendations which are at the end. Whichever ministry, whichever parastatal must follow those recommendations. Usually when it's money issues, the Minister of Finance comes to recommend, to respond to the reports in terms of how money was used. And if he doesn't do that, it can cause for the budget not to be passed because these are Treasury minutes. The Treasury minutes because the Minister of Finance must respond to post-budget expenditure. You budget for 500 clinics and they're not there, you must respond why. You see?
So your role is to question?
Yes, to interrogate further, to be able to expose and to be able to ensure that things are done through the recommendation. So APNAC, now coming to APNAC, and there are also portfolio committees which are responsible for having oversight over certain ministries. And they also are able to come up with various recommendations. The problem is that no one implements those recommendations. No one takes on board those recommendations, which is the most painful aspect of all this because that's a lot of money which would have been used taxpayers' money. So it's the end game. In anything, the end game is what is important. So what is the end game after all these recommendations? There's not much that happens. And APNAC now comes in. So Parliament has played its part in debating. The parastatals, the ministries are not doing anything. So APNAC is like the eagle's eye. So we're now coming through to say, no, like Zenara must be commended. We went to the AGM because we wanted to see what they'd done about the recommendation of the Auditor General's report in the forensic audit. And it's pleasing. With the new Minister, Honourable Felix Mona, his Deputy Mike Madiro, they've done well, together with the Permanent Secretary, Engineer Chinyan. But what's pleasing is the chairperson of Zenara, Dr. George Manyaya, a young man, and it's a breath of fresh air to see young people coming through with that capacity. And he's backed up by a number of key board members, aldermen, Honourable Zindi, Comrade Zindi was an honourable member of Parliament, and you've got a good CEO. So they've now dealt with those recommendations, and we're using them as a case study to all parastatals. We are meeting in about a month's time in Kariba with the Anti-Corruption Commission for them to roll out the national anti-corruption strategy. next. So we are saying, how did you do this? And we want certain parastatals, ZCTU, we want a Chamber of Mines Industry to be there to say, this is...
See the example.
Exactly.
Set by
and
others.
so once we start complying, so no one was doing that.
Okay.
It's all good, you buying clothes for a child, you pay school fees for them. It's a different thing taking them to school, making sure they're in class. It's a different thing going through their homework. It's a different thing making sure they've ate well. It's a different thing making sure they've slept.
So you're saying you're walking them, the parastatals,
Exactly.
the ministries, you're walking them through the process.
We saw that as the weakest link in terms of all these reports, that nobody was doing that. Us are now coming in to assert ourselves and to say, why are you not implementing this?
Okay, so this is you as APNEC. There are some parliamentarians that have said, but we are not involved in the transaction. We are not involved in the implementation. Ours is to recommend and then report after the fact. So APNEC has the capacity
even those ones, excuse me, it's not every member of parliament who is really intellectually gifted, by the way. So the understanding of parliament is different. Parliament has power according to section 117, 118, 119 of the Constitution. And to me, when we recommend, you must do it. The Public Financial Management Act that you spoke about is critical in compliance. And it talks about parastatals, ministries coming with quarterly financial reports before them. But some committees do not compel the institutions that they superintend over. And that is their fault. But the laws are very clear. Zimbabwe has got good laws. Okay. While it has good laws, it fails to enforce the laws. And we cannot continuously change laws when we have good Public Financial Management Act. Excellent. So if you have not reported quarterly as you're expected to, why should we pass the budget for you? The recommendations that we would have come up with, if you don't implement them, why should we pass the budget for you? This is where you realize that Parliament, at times, because of the whipping system, because of the ruling party too, being 2/3 majority, have got their way while we have our say. And in so doing, they will not expose themselves too. You must understand that. But APNEC can do it. Okay, can do it. Because this is a voluntary organization which works together with the United Nations anti-corruption strategies, which are there together with Africa and all that. So that is now the third eye, if you want to call it, on ensuring that things go about right in terms of recommendation, implementation, and finally execution.
Honorable, we just want to go back to the issue of the auction that you talked about earlier on in the first segment. And next month marks the second anniversary since its inaugural launch. And Forex traded on this auction is taxpayers' money, like you have mentioned before. And what have you done to date as APNEC to satisfy yourselves that there's no corruption and that insider trading is not happening in the market?
APNEC has, of yesterday, the Minister of Finance, Minister of Industry, Wednesday, we have asked the Minister to give us a list of all the companies that have been given. And not only that.
Have you received it?
It's coming. She's bringing it. All the companies that have benefited. We also want to see whether they've been selling their products at the auction rate in Zim dollar with their access, US dollar.
All right.
And we also want...
That is pretty thorough.
No, it's we are hitting it as it is, because we want to know if you've been given money, okay?
What have you used it for?
Yeah, you're supposed you've bought in cooking oil to buy cooking oil. You cannot sell it in US. You can sell it in US dollars, but you also must give the option of the Zimbabwe auction rate, which will access the Zim dollar. Has that been happening? And not only that, we want to know, have these things been delivered? Okay, because people, if there's anything which is doing business in Zimbabwe, set up a company which will register companies outside Zimbabwe. There's a lot of money which has gone. So what they do, they invoice. They get the money, it's the same company. When you go outside, it's the same people. Do they bring the money back? No, they don't. Do the products come? No, they don't. So it's a warning that APNEC has initiated this, and it's a first. And I can tell you there'll be a lot of heart attacks out there because people have been sitting pretty, on dirty money, on taxpayers' money, and we'll not allow that to happen. We don't care who you are. If it's the political party supporting them, they'll lose power because of the corruption which is rampant. No one can withstand it anymore. Yes. We need to call a spade a spade.
But how do you intend on doing that?
We've already started.
No. I see. I hear what you're saying. You said that you've gone and you've asked for the list. Yes. And how are you going to implement the justice, so to speak? At some point, you're going to have to surrender this information.
One thing you've got to understand, you can only do so much. You can't do everything.
Yes.
And what we can do is so much we can't arrest.
So you just want to unearth it all?
Unearth and say, but this one did not use this money correctly. We cannot arrest. It's up to the law enforcement agents to be able to now zero in on that and play their role.
Okay. So are we not geared for another debt accumulation or RBZ debt assumption? And what will your caucus do to ensure that this is not the case?
Listen, laws are passed.
Because my concern is that we're going back to 2019 where something similar happened and the government ended up having to borrow.
Listen, government will borrow, but what are you borrowing for? Debt assumption, ZAMCO. Let me be honest, I'm a beneficiary of the tractors which were given by government, and the ZAMCO was part of debt assumption by government. And people said, no, but Honorable Mliswa, you got tractors, combine harvesters. And said, yes, it was a program. And government decided to take over the debt. You cannot say I've stolen. We must understand that.
Yes.
Are you with me? So people, again, were misinformed about it, lacked information. At times we're too emotional, too polarized, and we don't see the facts at the end of the day. The land reform came. Whoever benefited from land must be empowered too. You've got to understand there was a vacuum. When the white farmers left, there was no equipment, there was not... Government had to come with an intervention. The same way with inputs. But what we don't want is abuse of those items. If Mr. Mliswa is on his farm and it's not productive and yet he's got all these things, why? So, so these are some of the issues which I think are quite critical in ensuring that we pay attention to detail. And that's the other issue that you and I have got to agree. We seem not to pay attention to detail. You see black, but inside it could be white.
Okay.
So go all the way. Turn it inside out.
But it's still quite concerning, though, because government borrowed 1.4 billion from Afrexim for currency reforms, and it seems that the same thing is going to happen again. What is APNAC going to do about that to ensure that we don't repeat the cycle?
Listen,
history doesn't
APNAC,
repeat itself.
Like I said, will always play its role. I think I've been very clear about this. But there are also other players. APNAC already has made noise which many people have not made. We debated on Wednesday until the Deputy Minister of Local Government admitted that they were using devolution funds without an enabling act, which we've been pushing. And that's the biggest fraud ever. Yeah. APNAC has also pushed that the war veterans vetting, which is going on. How do we know these are war veterans? Since 42 years, the real war comrades are dead. So who's a comrade? Some, the few are there. Okay, so who's a comrade vet? I've got friends of mine I went to school with who are now all collaborators who are benefiting from this system.
Surely not.
So we've now asked for a reconciliation of names.
So that committee needs to be tied up, and because you're saying they've all died, and it needs to be tied up.
You need honest people.
Closed.
You need honest people.
At some point, I suppose that was going to
The
happen.
few that are there have not been involved too. They've gone and handpicked. Corruption, politicization of institutions and of national programs.
So you're saying the age band should be demarcated and then we close that chapter?
Yes.
And move on as a country?
Listen, you cannot take away that we're where we are because of the freedom
Absolutely
fighters,
not.
But let them be compensated well, but let's do it timelessly. But 42 years, that's when we want to come and do it.
Okay. All right. So the government, as you know, has suspended bank lending to both government and private sector. And you know that lending is a core mandate of banks. Is this suspension of bank law not a usurp of powers for the legislature by the executive? How do you feel about that?
No, they were supposed to come through Parliament. Honourable BT, great legal priors was very clear. They were supposed to come to Parliament.
Yes.
And
so you are disgruntled as Parliament?
Yes, Parliament must be respected. And anything
must go through the channels at all times.
Exactly. And we're following that. We're following that big time.
And there is the question of why politicians were involved in economic issues. What do you have to say about that?
But there are politicians who are equally competent, who are economists.
That is right.
Who are chartered accountants. Should they not perform the role?
In what capacity, though?
In the capacity that they be the best fitted. You can't do everything. You've got to allow people to do what they specialize, expertise in a certain area.
Okay, so do you think the suspension of formal lending channels was well thought out? Do you think it's a good policy?
No, it wasn't. People were not consulted about it.
It was rather abrupt.
Yeah.
So do you think it would be different if Parliament had been consulted?
Yeah, and the people, we must always talk to people. This is what we intend to do and hear what they have to say. We must not ambush people.
Yeah, okay. All right, but... All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll just take another break for now. Okay, so Honorable Mliswa, to increase the use of the local currency, the government has introduced measures to make it costly for one to transact in US dollars. So the cash withdrawal levy of 2% for amounts above $1,000 and 4% tax on all domestic USD transfers. As APNAC, what is your take on these new taxes?
Listen, one would read that it's just a way of government making money, foreign currency, so that they can plunder it. It has many ways of raising money, and that's one of them. And we've seen government taxing. This is the very same government that believes in its own currency, but is taxing people in US dollars.
In US dollars,
where's that US dollars going at the end of the day? We need to be very clear, because you can't have two bulls and a crow. You've got to understand that. And if you've got more than two bulls and a crow, you've got to let them fight and see which one stands. So in this situation, it's pretty clear that our currency is weak, and it does not mean that if the bull has lost the fight with the other bull, it's the end of the game. No, it must recuperate, it must re-strategize, come back with the better strategies to win. So we seem as a people to be obsessed, with our currency.
Yes.
But if it does not offer you nothing, it offers you nothing. Build on it so that it can offer something, add value to it. But you do that through production, through cutting down on corruption, illicit money flows, the extraction of minerals, diamonds, gold going out of the country. We've been talking about we're endowed with resources, but how much and where is the money of these resources so that people can live well and so forth. So education, infrastructure, amenities, health improve because of the resources of the country that are coming and it's passed out accordingly. Budgets are passed, but 30% is disbursed. Are you not creating corruption too? Because the 70 that has not come through is supposed to help people. If not, they'll help themselves. They end up being corrupted. Is government not the source of the black market? Why do they pay the farmers in RTGS, yet the farmers get inputs in US dollars? So they'll go on the parallel market and get that. So government is the biggest culprit in terms of pushing the black market.
So these are observations, but now what does APNAC intend to do about these about the announcement that the president made this week?
No, APNAC wants to see a better economy. APNAC is yet to sit down and analyze this, because we do have a researcher and say, what is the impact of this? And we're doing that next week.
Oh, okay. A lot is going to happen next week, isn't it? Yeah. All right. So the government announced that the dual pricing system will continue as part of the de-dollarization process, while others are calling the re-dollarization as public confidence in Zimbabwe has reached new lows. Right. As APNEC, what do you think should be done by authorities for Zimbabwe to reclaim economic stability?
Allow the river to flow in its direction.
Which river? There's so many of them.
The currency, you've got the currency, the Zim dollar, US dollar, allow it to flow, allow it to trade at whichever level. Then it will sit there.
But it's spiraling. At some point, it's going to crash.
Pronouncements are dangerous. Government is the culprit. Government pronouncements are dangerous. They bring uncertainty. They bring panic. It's jittery for any investor. You say you cannot borrow when the banks are closed, when really banks are about lending. So, and then you can see the companies that have written letters to say we cannot pay in advance
quite a
anymore.
few, yes. Quite a few
but
have
these are
written
big
letters.
hitters. What about those who are not big hitters? The ripple effect on the companies, on the economy, okay, is the ripple effect on the confidence the people who have. The ripple effect on foreign currency, foreign direct FDI, foreign direct investments is terrible, because how do you now reconcile? How do you grow when there are no foreign direct investments coming into a country? There are people who are on their way to Zimbabwe to invest. They have gone back.
Yet again, because they did.
Confidence is critical. Reassurance. That's the reason why people don't keep money in banks, because they knew this would happen. They went through it again. Boom, you do it again.
So it continues to happen. It's a vicious cycle.
The last time they lost money 1-1.
Exactly. No one was willing to invest.
There's no one has recovered from that. Why are we doing this to our people? Why don't we allow things to happen?
So when you say allow the river to flow, that's the currency river that you've spoken about.
Yeah.
What would you recommend? What is it that they're actually supposed to do?
Allow the market to dictate where the rate of the Zim dollar to the US dollar will be.
So what's the point of having economists then if you're going to allow
No, economists, again, look at Zambia. Zambia's rate was 20-something before HH. It went down to 17, 16 to the dollar. But the kwacha is still there. The US dollar is still there. No one is saying we mustn't have our currency. We must. But let's also understand it's not strong right now because of pronouncements which are made, which are of a panic mode. The bond was about 1 to 2, 1 to 3. As soon as we made pronouncement, that was it. Africans love cash in their hands.
That's true.
Okay, they love cash in their hands. These electronic transfers has only happened when you've digitized, when ICT has moved to the rural areas. Already we're failing to educate our own because they don't have access to the internet. So the ones with access are now ahead. Yes. And because of a basic
violation. Only 52% of Zimbabweans right now have access to the internet, and that's not good enough. That's not good enough at all. So I think it's time for us to play that little game I told you about.
Let's go. What's the game?
So what we do is that it's a blind game. So the guest who comes before you will ask you a question, and you have to answer, and then ask the guest who's going to come after you. You don't know who's asked you the question.
Okay.
You may find out if you watch the show, but you don't know who you've asked your question to.
It's a game, you say.
Yes, it's a game. But then it's serious. We need serious answers. Yeah. So your question is, what can be done to strengthen our oversight institutions?
They must be depoliticized. That's it. No politics. Depoliticized.
And just base everything on fact?
Merit.
Okay.
Capacity.
And results,
patriotism,
obviously.
Nationalism. And results. That's it.
Okay. So what question would you ask our next guest?
Are you...
Think about this.
Yeah.
Take your time.
My next guest is, are you polarized?
Are you sure?
I'm serious. Our people are so polarized and I'm worried. So I'm looking forward to one who's not. So that was my question.
So there will just be a yes or no answer, and they leave it there. That's not going to make the game fun.
Okay.
Just expand a little bit on your question.
Okay. What do you think His Excellency, Comrade Dr. Idi Mnanga, must do at this juncture to instill confidence in the people of Zimbabwe and give them hope?
I like that one. You're killing them. I like it. I like that one. Okay, so I'll ask that question and we'll take it and we'll move. Okay. All right. Yeah. This will make you watch our show.
Okay.
And then you get the answer that you're looking for, right? Thank you so much, Honorable. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a wonderful time we've had. And thank you so much to our viewers. Please join us once again next week.